Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. Tons to dive into today around the NBA. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, how are you holding up in the wake of the U.S. men's national team's exit from the World Cup? It is still weighing on me heavily.
Yeah, it was disappointing the way they played. The fact that they
Yeah.
lost in the knockout phase, I'm not that part. I'm not as down on. It just is, kind of is what it is, right? They just they didn't play well. They
Mhm.
couldn't finish chances in the box themselves, and then didn't mark guys in the box on the other end, and that's always gonna go poorly when you don't do that. I've watched more than enough soccer at all sorts of levels to know there's two universal truths. If you don't finish your chances and you give the other team clean ones, you're gonna end up losing.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's like missing a layup on one end. You know you're giving up
Mhm.
either a layup or a three going back the other way.
Yeah.
That was the frustrating part. I said they were playing with house money as soon as they got out of the group stage. That was all that was expected out of them. They're one of the youngest teams in the tournament, so I was not expecting them to get past the Netherlands, but was hoping them to show a little bit better.
Mhm.
Clearly, over the next 4 years before the World Cup comes to North America, they got to find a striker, and they've got some more work to do. But I don't want to spend too much time on soccer here or
Let's move
football,
into the
whatever
NBA.
you want to call it. Is there a point where we can just start calling it football? Probably not, because the NFL, huh?
Yeah, probably
Just never
not.
going to
I
happen.
don't think that's ever going to take on, especially not with the whole prevalence of the it's called soccer chants and all that stuff at the World Cup. I don't think we're ever going to get there.
Yeah, yeah. It is a bit weird. Football just makes more sense to me because
Hmm.
you actually use your football. And
Yeah.
anyway, that's
Yep.
a whole different rabbit hole to go down. Let's dive into some NBA drama
Let's do
here,
it.
and let's start off with Trae Young. Things are getting icy. Trey Young and the Hawks. This whole situation, yikes! Not wanting to go through a shoot around, wanting to get treatment instead. Puts him at odds with Nate McMillan, who says either show up to this or you're going to come off the bench, or just don't even show up to the game at all. And he chooses not to show up to the game at all. Not great. What's going on in Atlanta?
Yeah, I mean, by all accounts, it's just another run-in with Trey Young and a coach. This is two coaches in a row now. Nate McMillan after Lloyd Pierce, he had issues with both of them, so we'll see, where that kind of goes from there. Obviously, the Hawks are committed to Trey Young long term.
Mm-hmm.
They give him a ton of money. He's the star player on that team. He's one of the most popular players in the league. But at some point, this stuff has to get resolved. You can't keep having run-ins with coaches. If it was once, you start to look at it and say, all right, well, the coach is probably equally as at fault. Once it happens a second time, that gets a little sketchy, right? Where it's like, all right, the only consistent variable here is you. So what are we doing in this situation? So Atlanta just though John Collins trade rumors. There's
Mm-hmm.
rumors of other guys being unhappy with contract statuses, all sorts of stuff over the last couple of years. So you start to wonder, like, do you need to just start to shake things up? That core group outside of DeJounte Murray has been there together for a while. Is it time to maybe start looking at doing something different?
I would be very, and you know what I said over the summer that I would be surprised if the Hawks didn't make a move with John Collins, and I'm going to be surprised again if they don't do something with him by the trade deadline. He's just been
Yeah.
in rumors for way too long here. The Trey Young situation, Keith, this comes as no surprise. I had multiple, like probably a dozen Lakers fans reach out to me saying, "What about this trade for Trey Young?" No,
Sure.
we're not at that. The Hawks, first
No.
of all, the Hawks aren't going to trade him. If they were going to trade him, there would be teams willing to give everything to get him. I don't think that's the way this is going here, but this is something worth keeping an eye on moving forward here. And interestingly enough, the Hawks actually beat a good Nuggets team without Trey Young.
Hmm.
So, it's not like they're dropping in the standings and there's all this concern about, hey, we need to do something because we're losing games. No, they've actually been pretty good, and they're sitting okay right now in the Eastern Conference. I just think at some point they've got to figure this out with Trey and figure out some way to make things work. And maybe team meetings and all that is just it's not enough at this point.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's the challenge is, where do you go? And it just feels like overall that's an unhappy roster that
Mhm.
needs some change at some point soon.
All right, let's get into an unfortunate story. Nasir Little out 6 weeks with a hip fracture. The Blazers have been dealing with a number of injuries. Damian Lillard dealing with a calf issue as well. What does this mean for the Blazers, for Nasir Little? Is this something that can be an ongoing thing, something you'll be concerned about, 3 months from now, or is this kind of 6 weeks? He's good to go, and you move on.
I mean, I guess the 6 weeks is the front end of getting back to basketball
Yeah,
activity. I can't imagine a hip fracture or something you're gonna bounce right back from. I don't have a ton of the details on is it a full fracture? Like I don't know.
sure.
Fracture is such a kind of nebulous term sometimes. So I'm not sure, but I do know for Portland, for as long as he's out, low to their depth. They just got Damian Lillard back, just got Josh Hart. He was out
Mhm.
for only a couple games, but Lillard back. You've got a couple other guards and wings that you can kind of mix through there, but Nasir Little was a key rotation guy for that Portland team, and now they're going to be without him for a little while. So they're going to be relying on a guy like Trendon Watford, who's actually played pretty well for them, to step in and continue to give them more minutes. He can play alongside Jeremy Grant in lineups where they become kind of interchangeable forwards, and they've done that some while other guys have been out. Josh Hart's minutes will probably pick up, and then probably Shaden Sharp probably sees more minutes in 3 guard alignments alongside Lillard and Simons, as opposed to playing with one of the two of them, which is what he's done for most of the season thus far.
And the hope has to be for Portland that Lillard returning is going to stabilize them. Obviously, they slid while he was out. They're currently sitting in 8th in the Western Conference, but the West is so compact. I mean, one good week or one bad week could move you up or down a ton with the way the West is shaping up. So right now they're sitting in the 8th seed. They were the 1 seed at one point. Again, I think the standings are they're gonna fly all over the place for a little bit.
Yeah, somehow I don't think they're going to get back to that status, though.
Sure.
But somewhere between 4 and 10,
Yeah.
maybe 11 or 12. We'll see. That feels about right.
All right, let's talk trade here. Eric Gordon has been discussed in multi-team scenarios. Not a surprise. It felt like the right time for Houston to pull the trigger on an Eric Gordon trade was probably like a year and a half ago. And here they are. He's still under contract with them. Older player, but could shoot. And there's a lot of teams that are going to be looking for that. Why a multi-team trade? Is that just they can't find a 1-for-1 deal that makes sense, or what are we looking at here?
This was attached to some of the Jay Crowder reporting, so I think that's where it was there's not a natural match between those two teams. There's been thoughts of Eric Gordon to the Suns in the past, but Jay Crowder going back to the Rockets doesn't make sense. That's not anything the Rockets need to do. So that's where my guess is the multi-team part of this comes from, as Crowder goes somewhere, Gordon goes somewhere, and then the Rockets get younger players, picks, things like that meet for them. He's $19.5 million this year. Next year he's $20.9 million, but that contract is fully non-guaranteed until the end of June, unless Gordon makes the All-Star team. That's not going to happen. No. Or whatever team he's on wins the championship this season, then it becomes fully guaranteed. And much like we talked about with like the Al Horford deal back in the day, you're fine to let the deal become fully guaranteed if it meant you won the title. Then you're perfectly happy to say, hey, that's the cost of winning a championship. Let's go. So, but yeah, I mean, Eric Gordon definitely helped any number of teams with his on a really good team. He'd probably be an off the bench, 6th, 7th, 8th man kind of guy, come in, provide you some scoring and shooting. And, there's a lot of teams that could use him.
I think the issue from past seasons, because my Lakers have been involved in discussions around, well, basically every player, but it's felt like the Rockets had a really high asking price for Eric Gordon. Obviously they did, because if they didn't, then something would have been done. I can't see a team giving up a first at this point for Eric Gordon. Maybe there's a bigger deal where it makes sense, but what do you think is the market value for a player like him?
Probably some combination of a first round pick, a protected first for sure. Like something.
Protected first is a different
lottery first, top 20, maybe even protected. But yeah, I think that would make sense.
If you do, as long as you can put protections on something, it's when you get into unprotected and stuff that it gets.
Yeah, you just crazy. Can't. Yeah, I mean, an unprotected pick would be nuts, because if everything went sideways on you, you can't be giving up a lottery pick for a year of Eric Gordon. That would work.
All right. Speaking of trades and the Lakers, Zach Lowe mentioned that the Lakers had internal talks about potentially pursuing DeMar DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic from the Chicago Bulls. My first thought on this, and I talked about this over on Lakers Nation, was, so what? I'm sure they've had internal talks about what 400 players at this point, right? Like they've had internal talks about it, and every team that's not unique to the Lakers. That's every team is talking about because that's what you're supposed to do. That's the job. So it's in that sense, it's kind of much ado about nothing. But bigger picture, I guess the question becomes: do the Bulls eventually become a seller sometime before the trade deadline? When you look at the NBA right now, the way things are stacked up, there's not that many teams that are really positioned to be sellers, and part of that is the impact of the play-in tournament. But will the Bulls eventually decide to rip that Band-Aid off and become a seller at the trade deadline? I don't know if that's the way that's going to go, but I don't think this is a sign that there's a pending negotiation here with the Lakers that's happening.
No, I didn't take that to be the case either at all. I think there's two sides to this. One is focusing on the Bulls side of it. First is there is clearly some idea out there amongst other teams that the Bulls are open for business to some extent. You're starting to hear other teams mentioned in conjunction with more guys like Vucevic and things like that, guys, because he's on that expiring contract, stuff like that. So I think what we can take away is teams may push to see, all right, Chicago, you stink right now. They're 9-14. They've lost 3 in a row. They're really not playing well at all. Now they're still only 4 games out of home court advantage because it's so early. But if you don't turn it around within the next month or so, that starts to get a little worrisome beyond just this. And I think one of the thought processes that's out there when you talk to folks around the league is, well, they're locked in on Levine, so he can't go anywhere. Lonzo can't, you can't move him right now because you have to give up stuff to get off of his contract because he's with the knee problems. So that kind of leaves DeRozan and Vucevic. So where are you going? Because Kobe White doesn't really hold much trade value, and the rest of the roster is kind of, more role player types. So that turns into, all right, if you wanted to reset this. But what I think gets missed a little bit, a lot of people get super excited about like, hey, maybe the Bulls should just tank. They owe Orlando a top 4 protected pick. So unless you feel really confident you can fully bottom this thing out and land in the top 4, you tanked for nothing because now you're going to lose that pick to the Magic and hand them a pick, in the 5 to 10 range. Maybe that happens anyway. We don't know that's certainly possible, but right now from that side, that's what I think is going on the Bulls side of this.
Yeah, I mean, and that's with the flattened, or not completely flattened, but the more flattened lottery odds. I mean, how comfortable would the Bulls ever feel? Like, even if you drop to the worst record, there's still that chance. I mean,
you feel good if you're like, if you're in that top 3 mix. Like, if you were the worst record in the league, I think you'd feel pretty good because that would mean 4 teams would have to jump up, and then that's not going to happen. Just being realistic. Yeah. But if you're like 3 or 4, you're 2 teams away from bumping you back, and now all of a sudden, hey, Orlando, here's a really great pick. Again, because that already happened once when they got Franz Wagner. So you got to be really, really cautious if you're the Bulls. Now the Lakers side of this, I mean, we're hearing every day, it feels like, another report of the Lakers are close to something. The Lakers are involved in X, Y, and Z, and all this stuff. And a lot of people seem to think December 15th, which is, it's weird. It's starting people are starting to think like that's when trades are allowed.
Right. Yeah. I've been seeing a lot of that, as though there's like Adam Silver fires off a starting gun and like the race begins on December 15th.
We have a 2-month trade season run. Yeah.
and go.
To some extent, it kind of is, but trades are allowed right now. Trades can happen today. There's no, the minute the league year, flips over and the moratorium is over, trades can happen all the way up to the trade deadline. The December 15th significance is that's when the vast majority of the players who are traded over the summer, or signed over the summer rather, can be traded. What happens is if you sign on July 7th, you can't be traded until December 15th. That's the way it works. It's either 3 months or December 15th. So whatever is the date there that comes with that. So what happens in that situation is, those guys will sit and they'll have to wait until December 15th on that. And that's why I think with the Lakers, but I think I don't get the sense this is going to be a massive blockbuster, like a rush trade that delivers, two guys, because most of what has been kind of bubbling out there, that could be done today. There's no reason to wait on that, unless there's somebody they really want to include in the deal or get back the other way. I think it's more like, all right, well, we're going to move this smaller salaried player or two smaller salaries to go get something that's some kind of rotation upgrade. And now the thing is, as I know you're well aware of, it starts to make a heck of a lot more sense to start looking at deals if you're the Lakers, because they're playing pretty good. And now you've seen a couple teams in front of them. Minnesota is having some issues. A couple of the other teams, Portland, we already talked about. Everybody, I think, kind of expects maybe Utah will still fall out of the mix there. Now all of a sudden you can start saying, all right, Lakers, you can start making a run at that 5-6 range, and at least feel like, all right, if nothing else, we could get in the play-in and we can handle our business from there.
I don't even think the December 15th stuff is necessarily like, oh my gosh, because they've got this trade lined up for a player who just signed this past summer. So let's figure out who that is. I think it's more, let's see, it's going to take time for other teams to be ready to make trades. And then December 15th is usually when teams start to really get a sense for what they have, for where they're at, what they're willing to do, what they're not willing to do. All that sort of stuff starts to take shape around that time. I think it's more about that rather than there's a player who was signed over the summer that suddenly becomes available. Things around the NBA do open up then because more players become available as that point. But it's also because teams start to get a clearer picture of what they really have and don't.
Well, when you're the Lakers and you have, I don't know what the number is, I'd have to count it, but it's got to be at least 7 or 8 guys that you signed over the summer, even if it's somebody like Juan Toscano Anderson, who's not currently in the rotation, and you just need to throw his salary in to make it work, that could be another part of the whole, we got to wait until December 15th, stuff there. I really don't think we're going to get, I don't think we're waking up on December 15th to a Woj bomb that says, Russ has been traded for, Turner and Hield or Vooch and DeRozan or anything like that. I just don't think that's there. And then the bigger thing about the Lakers and internal talks, the Lakers can set a million different targets, because the single most important thing in any of these trade talks is, before you even get to value, how can you match salary? That's the single biggest thing in trade talks that teams have to be focused on. And with Russ's $47 million, you can match salary on anything. You can do basically any variation of deals you want. Now, then you get into the value of, does it have to be picks, and what else is going on, and and all that stuff. But my guess is they're just going to play it out with him. I don't see anything big coming, especially not with how well he's been playing in recent weeks.
That's my question. And you'd be a good person to ask this too. Around the NBA, do you think that the value of Russell Westbrook has changed in terms of, over the summer, we kept hearing that the price of a team taking on Russell Westbrook is one unprotected first-round pick. And then if something else is coming back, then that's another first-round pick. That was kind of the general thought of how teams around the NBA are valuing Russell Westbrook. You mentioned Russ has been playing better, so his value to the Lakers has probably changed because he's not a net negative at this point. But has that really changed anything for teams around the NBA? My guess is no.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't think at all, because I think there's two pieces you have to have of the conversation. There is, what role is he going to play for us if we get him, if anything at all, or is he just a contract to facilitate the move? And the second piece needs to be, let's say it is another team that says, we're not bad. We're in the same boat as the Lakers, right? We're kind of middle of the pack. We could, make a run at the playoffs, maybe the play-in, and we go there. Then what you could see happen in that situation is, we like Russ as a 6 man. Yeah, but you don't have LeBron and AD. So is he going to buy into being a 6 man on, just any team that's out there? Now, I think he should. I think that should be his role going forward. I think when he approaches his next contract this summer with whoever it is, it should be with the idea in mind of, hey, you're going to be a high usage 6 man, a 25, 30-minute a night 6 man starter when we need you to be. But that's where we're going to run with this. And I think he'd have massive value to any number of teams in that role. And maybe that's eventually where that will go. But right now, I think teams would still look at it and say, this is Russ, $47 million. We still need pick to take on the deal. And because nobody's going to look at him and be like, 15 assists. Well, plug him right in. He's our starting point guard, and off we go. I don't think any team's going to see it that way.
And that's exactly why I think a trade is actually even less likely now that he's playing better, because if you're the Lakers, you don't have as much incentive to pay the price to move him if he's not playing poorly for you. And then conversely, if the price stays the same for another team, you're not going to feel like it's okay to have to pay to get him off your roster again. So I think that makes it even less like, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Maybe something comes up, but just in terms of the value piece to this, I think that a deal is even less likely now than it would have been over the summer.
Yeah, and I think the reason why we don't use absolutes, everybody, is the minute you start using absolutes, you're lost, right? Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
That's why we say just hoops, no hot takes. If this was a hot take show, we would be saying the Lakers are trading Russell Westbrook. I will stake my reputation on it.
And one of us would argue the other side.
And one of us would argue the other side. No, you're
exactly.
crazy. And yeah, that's what would happen. That's not this show, though. Let's move on before we delve into those dark waters. Dean Wade.
It was right there. I even used the Sith, use absolutes. You could have said until we go to the dark side. Missed opportunities.
Darn it.
Well, I would say we'll fix it in post, but we're not going to.
No, we're not going to. We're not going to. We're not going to fix it in post. And you know what? You know what that is? Just to bring it all full circle, I still have the U.S. men's national team on the brain. So, of course, there has to be missed opportunities.
Well done. And Jedi, missed opportunity. Did mark his man on the back post.
Oh.
See? Star Wars. Links it all.
That's where we're at. That's where we're at. Dean Wade, out 3 to 4 weeks with a left shoulder injury. What is this? I mean, this is a depth concern here potentially for the Cavs. Probably still raising eyebrows around the NBA from casual fans who think that Dwayne Wade is still playing.
Sure.
I'm sure that's probably happening as well.
Which is really unfair because Dean Wade's good.
He is.
He's just a good basketball player.
Just unfortunately named.
Yeah, key depth guy for the Cavs. He's been one of their better backup forwards in the mix there. They use him at when they want to play those big lineups because he is a legit 6'10". They plug him in at small forward and just keep moving along. He was starting while some other guys were out at times, and now this left shoulder injury is rough too. And just to give a sense of what Dean Wade is, 41% 3-point shooter. This season, 45% overall from the field, 6 points, 4 rebounds, holds his own defensively, 24 minutes per game. So that's a rotation spot the Cavs are going to have to plug in there. They're going through it with injuries. Jared Allen is out,
back contusion.
So he's out. Wade's out. They still don't have Rubio in the lineup. Kevin Love just recently returned. Karis LeVert is just getting back to a few games ago. So Cavs have gone through it a little bit injury wise. So, but still, hanging in there. Still, they're third in the East. Playing pretty well despite a loss to the Knicks last night.
Some rough times for the Wizards right now. Anthony Davis dropped 55 on them last night.
All right, so let's pause there for a second.
Yeah.
This is the best he's played as a Laker, right? I know they won the title. But
I wrote about this today. Okay. I said, I talked about how the Lakers, Lakers fans have been hoping to see the 2020 championship version of Anthony Davis again, and never would have dreamed that you'd be seeing a better version. And that's what we're getting right now.
Yeah. Let's just say they continue to play well and play better. This is a guy who's going to be in the MVP mix.
Yes.
I mean, that's how well he's playing. Now, right now, and people may get mad and say, well, he should be right now. You're not winning the MVP with an under 500 record.
Right. And you can argue that that's not how it should be. It should just be the best player, whatever. But that's been a thing for decades. It is what it is. You don't get MVP
and it's not
consideration if you're not top 5 or something.
Yeah. It's not baseball where a guy can be pitched around and all these things, where one guy can hit home runs and if nobody else does anything, it just isn't. So, but yeah, I mean, I just looked it up: 28.6 points, 12.8 rebounds. I didn't realize he was leading the NBA in rebounding.
He's become an absolute. I haven't looked to see if he's leading the NBA in this.
He is
offensive boards.
He's got to be up there because he's getting 3.4 per game.
Yeah,
so
he's feasting on the offensive glass. He has just been an absolute monster. It's been incredible seeing what he's been doing. But the Wizards, obviously, AD went berserk on them last night, and then we get this as well. Bradley Beal mentioning that I believe it was on Gilbert Arenas' podcast that the reason why he signed with the Wizards was because contending teams didn't have cap space to sign him.
Sure.
That's not great.
That's great.
As far as like his longevity with the Wizards, if it's, well, I only signed with this team because nobody that was any good could sign me anyway. Like, I know that I'm sure there's more to it and everything. That's not the only reason, and you can soften that and everything. But at its core, that can't feel great for the Wizards.
Yeah, I'll give the full quote. He said, on the business side of it, there were no teams in the market, just free agency wise. I'm just being frank. There was nowhere else for me to go where I can win. There were teams that strategically wasn't what I wanted. Realistically, I won't say my hand was forced, but this was the best option that was on the table. Now, what has to upset you if you're the Wizards, where it's like, well, I came back just because they gave him a full max contract with a player option at the end and a no trade clause. Yeah. He has the only like true no trade clause in the NBA right now, which is, that just gives you a sense of, one, how hard they are to come by, because you have to be with a team for so long to be able to even qualify. But then just like, it's just, that has to be maddening if you're a Wizards fan of like, hey, what, like fan, front office, everybody together is like, wait a minute, man. Now, always appreciate the candor, always appreciate the honesty, like always like appreciate when players tell us the true story behind things. I just get a little bit nervous with this, that it is like, oh boy. Now, I don't think it changes anything because I don't think anybody's jumping on trading for Bradley Beal and all that money that's left. And again, you'd have to be a desperate team, and because he has a no trade, he might say, nah, I'm out. I don't really want to go there anyway. But yeah, this just, I don't know. This can't feel great if you're a Wizards fan.
So when you say that it's in particular not good because of the no trade clause and everything that they gave up, should Bradley Beal have said, well, my intentions aren't the best with signing this contract, or I'm only signing this by default or something, so you shouldn't give me a no trade clause? Or how are you, like, how,
no, I mean,
how do you handle that negotiation?
Players should get everything they ask for, right? It's a two-way street, right? The team, the Wizards could have very easily said, no, we're not giving you a no trade clause. And we don't know how that negotiation went. Did he ask for it, or did the Wizards just offer it? Right. Because if they just offered it, well, that's on you.
Take it.
That's exactly. That's, somebody knocks on my door today and gives me $1 million. Like, all right, thanks. Like, I mean, I'm sure nothing will go wrong with that. Right.
I think your reaction will be a little bit more than all right.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure it'd be a little bit like, wait, why? And then I'm like, and then I would take it and close and lock the door and run away out the back into the house. But I don't know. I just, I always look at it as players they should always ask for the moon, because you never know. You never know when a team's going to be like, okay, sounds good to us. Oh, full max deal, player option, no trade clause. Great. Thanks for sticking around. Done. Right. So that's to me, this is more on the team because the no trade clause, that was stunning when it came out in the first place. And now with this revelation from Beal himself, it's a little bit more so.
If Beal is not fully in on being a Washington Wizard, how big of a deal does that no trade clause become on his trade market?
Huge, because he controls it, right? Normally teams control trade process to a large degree. We talked about this kind of ad nauseum with the AD trade, and that one was a little bit more. AD had a lot more control because he was making it very clear to teams, I'm not re-signing. I'm going to the Lakers. One way or the other. And I think in this case, this is Beal can basically say, yeah, here, and here. And we hear about this all the time. Player X gave a team list of 5 teams or whatever. And normally the team's like, cute, thanks, great. If they don't make the best offer, it doesn't matter. Yeah. I think in this case with Beal, though, it does, because otherwise he'll say no. Like, I'm not going there. And I think people get confused on this. He can keep saying no. This isn't he can use it once to block a trade. He can continue to say no on trades all the way, until his contract expires if he wants. Now, it doesn't carry over if he is traded, then it's gone. So just to be clear.
but still, this is something that he can. I mean, he could block a trade indefinitely, and in any number of trades, and so this becomes tricky. I mean, we saw this actually with Kobe way back in the day, where there was a deal lined up with. I think there was a deal with the Bulls. There were deals, with the Pistons that were talked about, and Kobe. I don't recall if it was the Bulls deal or the Pistons deal or which one, but
I think it was the Bulls deal.
I think you're right. I think he looked at. I want to say it was like Luol Deng coming back, and there were some other pieces, and he looked at what the trade was going to be, and he went, well, no, I'd want to play with those guys. There'd be nothing left there. And they went, yeah, like that's what happened. So you could see a similar thing with Bradley Beal, where if he says, okay, I want to be traded, I don't want to go to teams X, Y, or Z, and then he sees what has to come back in that deal, and you wind up kind of at a stalemate between Beal and the Wizards.
Somehow, I don't think this one's going to work out quite as well for the Wizards as Kobe did for the Lakers. True. Just a guess. We'll see.
All right. Kemba Walker still dealing with knee issues. The new Dallas Maverick, Kemba Walker. That's not good for an older player who, a lot of his game was coming from athleticism, from his quickness, and he's got these knee issues that seem like they're going to linger. I don't know. I feel bad for Kemba. I want to see him get back to being productive and being able to be something on the court, but I mean, if you've got knee issues that are not going away, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, and this is all related to, from Walker's side, he says his knee feels great. It's felt as good as it has felt in the last couple of years, and that now it's just conditioning, ramping himself up, and getting ready to go to play for the Mavs. This all came out of Mavericks GM Nico Harrison was asked on a local radio appearance about Kemba Walker, and he said about his knee, it's not good. It's not good at all, but he's rehabbed it. It's the best he's felt in the last 2 years. So we'll see how long that lasts. And then he added, well, it hasn't been good for a few years. The reality is, if you look at it, it's not that good there, but that doesn't mean he can't play on it. So that's not what you really want to hear about a guy you just signed. Now
he's going to be playing on one leg, but he can play.
Yeah, it's like that Monty Python sketch. Right?
It's just a scratch.
Yeah. So but I think I think in this case with Kemba, it is you wanted to go into this feeling like, all right, hey, we're gonna play. I think everybody knows, right? Like this might only hold up for 2 months, 3 months, maybe 6 months, and it gets us all the way through a nice playoff run. But I don't think anybody wanted to go into it with the idea of like, well, it's probably not going to be very good, because that's not where you want to be. So, but again, I mean, we ask for honesty and candor, and when we get it, I guess we can't be too upset.
True. All right, let's finish with some positives. TJ Warren and Jimmy Butler back in action. TJ Warren, I think he said, I'm paraphrasing here, he said something like it was like a dream or something like that, getting back in the I mean, it's been 2 years? He had a couple of games or whatever, but I mean, that it's been such a journey for him. Happy for him to get back on, and then to hear him say something like that. So cool that he's made it back, and I just hope he can really get back to 100% and stay healthy.
Yeah, he looks pretty good physically. Obviously, there's rust and timing issues
that
are going to have to be knocked off, but he looks good physically. I got to see him play his first game back, and then get to see him play against Boston last night. And he can help the Nets for sure. There's definitely some stuff he can do. He had a really nice play in the second half, I think it was, where he took a rebound over the top of the Celtics and flipped it back in for a nice putback. So he's going to give them some bench scoring. And then Jimmy Butler, he did more than that nice game against the Celtics. He absolutely murdered them down the stretch of regulation and in overtime with big shot after big shot as the Heat won 1 of 2 in Boston. The only team to sweep one of those mini series this year, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Won 2 of them. I think those were both over the Clippers, and that probably was the Clippers, in quotations, because I don't know when they ever play anything resembling a full roster on LA's other team there. I'm starting to get worried about them. But yeah, I don't know, man. They just
got beat up by the Kings the other day. They've lost their last 2. They're a negative 1.8 in point differential.
Yeah, and Kawhi plays a game, and then he's out for like a week.
Yeah,
that can't be a thing. Like I get being cautious, and I get they're they're fine, I guess, playoff picture wise. But I don't know, man. They were my finals pick because I didn't think they were going to be quite this cautious and quite this injured again. I thought their depth would get them through, but we'll see.
I did too.
A lot of season to go.
I picked them to come out of the West, so
Yeah.
that's not looking great right now. You mentioned they were the only team. OKC was the only team to sweep a series. Are you talking about a 2-game homestand or?
Yeah, one of those mini series where you play the same team 2 games in a row.
The Lakers did it to the
season.
Spurs.
Oh, did they?
Okay. They did, but
all right. So it might have been before,
but it's the Spurs
because that was like last week, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So this was I want to say this was before the Lakers had played that second Spurs game.
But, how crazy is the Spurs have lost 11 straight?
I know,
and they are not winning the tank race right now. The Orlando Magic are with just 5 wins. The Spurs have 6.
Spurs are ahead of the Pistons too by a half game, based off the Pistons was last. But I mean the Spurs are not. They're like every night. It's like, all right, who's playing for the Spurs tonight?
Right.
Like, bring your sneakers to the. I was going to call it the Alamo Dome because I have no idea what their arena is called now. But bring your sneakers. You might get in the game because it's a mess, man. I can blame them. Spurs have only really tanked twice in their entire franchise history, and one of those times they came up with David Robinson, the other time Tim Duncan. So I think I think fortune tends to favor them. So
if they get Wembanyama out of this, they'll be perfectly happy with the way the season is.
And then Pop will coach till he's like 125 years old.
That's right.
I don't know why he would ever retire. Just keep doing it.
He can say anything he wants in the press. He can do whatever he wants at any time, and he could potentially coach one of the top talents, potentially a generational talent that could be coming into the NBA. Yeah, he'd be sticking around for a bit.
Yeah, man, imagine that, man. Imagine David Robinson into Duncan, all right, there's been a few years since Duncan retired, but then into Victor Wembanyama. Like, that's what a run. Like, that'd be unbelievable. Yeah. Good work if you can get it, I suppose.
Absolutely. All right, let's wrap things up there. Appreciate everybody for joining us. Make sure that you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office show right here on YouTube. Of course, if you're listening to the podcast version, check us out over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.